Welcome to LYLAS. If you grew up in the 90s and know what that stands for, then by default, this podcast is for you.
Welcome. We are here at, what is this, episode 8?
Episode 8.
Woo! Getting up there. So excited.
It is. This is a good one. I'm excited for this topic. I feel like I could talk about it all day long. So it's a
And I think,
personal favorite.
well, yeah, so many people are just going to relate to everything that we have to say on it because it consumes all of our lives, like 99% of the time, right?
As much as I hate to admit that, yes, I think it does. It's been so today's topic is diet culture. And, when we're going through and looking at topics each week, we're like, okay, what's going on right now? Like, what are we kind of experiencing right now? And really just trying to lead with what's going on in our lives. And I was telling Sarah that February for us, my husband and I, we always do some sort of diet or health reset, something, because here in Charleston, there's generally not a ton going on in February. It's kind of crappy weather. And so we like to sort of look inward and do things that are better for like health and self care, those types of things. So, in true fashion, we've been doing kind of our own things, which I'm going to talk about how difficult that's been. Typically, we're on the exact same plan, whatever it is. We're all in 100%, whether it's like Whole30 or we've done this health fitness called E2M. Some people are familiar with. It's through Facebook. It's a Facebook group. It's grown. It's gotten pretty huge. So we've done E2M a couple times. We've done like a gut reset that I did through a local health and wellness studio. And then currently, Jeff is counting macros. So he is
Mm,
learning about macros and tracking it using some sort of app that they've asked. And he's doing like in body scans to track his progress. And so I've just
wow.
sort of been floundering on the side because I do want to do something. Um, and I've done so many things. We started out, we were like, we'll do a Whole30, and then he switched to macros. And then I thought, well, E2M is pretty effective if you want to drop weight quickly. It's pretty
Mm,
effective. But again, these are like pretty strict diets. And so it's very helpful when we're doing it together versus, trying to do it by yourself. As I've mentioned, I don't love cooking. And so I really rely on him for a lot of the meal prep and cooking at night. So I've been sort of doing like the gut reset, which is just a plant focused diet. It is
mhm.
eating pretty much the majority of your meals are all plant based. You can have meat one time a day. I just kind of followed these 7 rules that we did last year in the challenge and during February. And the thing about all of these diets is you'll lose weight on them. I've had success with all of them. And it's, generally something we do together. We kind of laugh along. We go through like the detox period together because on all of them, you can't have wine or any kind of alcohol, which is always one of the hardest things for my husband. And then so we kind of go through that sugar detox, alcohol detox of not eating, crap basically. And then you get like that tiger blood around 20 days into these diets and where you just feel like you could conquer the world. And it's
Mm.
just, and you're feeling yourself, you're like thin and the bloat is gone. And so they can be a lot of fun if you've got kind of a partner to do it with you. I don't know, do you and Jeff ever do these kinds of like resets?
No, we don't. And I think the reason why is just because we have to be so consistent and in terms of what we eat. And so our consumption of food is very different from most people, mainly because of our medical conditions drive so much of it. Um, and so it's different for us. So I don't even use the word diet. Like even whenever
Right.
I'm clinically, it's a one of I have like a whole list of like bad 4-letter words. And
And that's one of them.
yeah, yeah, the typical like curse words aren't on that list. It's all like diet and quit and stop, like all these weird words that we don't think that
Can't.
yeah, can't, that don't have this much relevance but actually do. And so that's one of them that we just don't use
Say.
within our language. Yeah. So we pretty much follow the same eating pattern all of the time. And I like to cook, and so it makes it a little bit easier. But even whenever we travel or we have the kids, it's consistent. That's my consistency. If I have
I,
one thing in
I
my life.
mean, That's great though. I mean, that probably works better than the roller coaster that we like to go on where we eat just whatever we want to November, December, and then January hits and we kind of always do this reset and lose our winter fluff, as we like to call it, because it happens every year. We come back, we're 5 to 10 pounds heavier, and we think,
Mhm.
all right, time to get it off, and we work together, and it's just kind of a natural routine that we've fallen into. But the consistency from your what you all do is probably in the long term much better for you.
Well, it just from a medical standpoint. So even if it's not so much about like a lifestyle development pattern, from a medical standpoint, we just do so much better if we maintain consistency whenever it comes to what we put into our bodies. So that really does drive about, again, 99% of everything that I do is centered around food. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally every decision that I make a day is about what am I eating now? When is my next meal? And what can I anticipate happening between those 2 points? Because that's just going to affect so much of my body abilities, everything. And so all of the time, my mind is on food.
Yeah,
It's a
you're
weird thing.
I it is. It's liver, it's, life and death for you. So you have to constantly be aware
Hmm.
of what you're consuming and how much of you're consuming. I mean, you can't just, eat a sleeve of Girl Scout cookies.
No, God, that'd be fun though. I sometimes fantasize about that. I was walking down the cracker aisle the other day and I was like, oh, what I would do to have a nice
Just,
townhouse cracker, you
oh
know?
man, it's the
Oh,
little things. Well, it's great. I think it's important to enjoy food. Like when we're on vacation, I think it's so important to just really enjoy food because it can be so satisfactory and something to really enjoy in life, especially over coffee or with good friends or whatever.
mhm.
Um, food plays such a big part of our social being as well. But as I get older and we're doing these diets and our kids are getting older, that's kind of the kicker for me is like, what example am I setting for them? I don't want my daughter to have negative body image at all. And I don't want to ever kind of even put those thoughts in her mind the way that it was put in our thoughts when we were kids. I shared with you, I've basically been working out and on a diet since I was like 13 years old. And it's been such a huge part of my existence that, I love fitness. I love to work out. So it's not a negative thing. I think it's great in some ways that I've been moving my body like that since a young age. But it's always consumed my view of myself
Mm,
based on how my body looks, and it affects me. If I don't feel good about my body, it affects my mood. If I feel great about my body, I feel it also affects my mood. And
mhm,
so it just, it has a lot of hold over me that I really am trying to keep from from passing on to my kids. And so now they'll make comments like, are you and mommy on a diet? Are you and mommy doing that diet? Or why aren't you
yeah.
eating this? Or why, they're much more aware now. And so I find myself just trying to explain it to them in a way of just, well, we do this because we enjoy it. And then I got my husband sulking in the corner because I've got him on another effing diet that he doesn't want to do, or he wants a glass of wine and he can't have it, just he can't have a steak, whatever it is. He really hated the plant-based diet because no red meat. And that was
Mm,
like, just a no from him. And my son too. They're like, no, they're gonna have red meat a couple times a week. But just trying to be more aware of what example that's setting for our kids. Do I want them to be health conscious and take care of their bodies? Absolutely. But do I want it to consume their entire being? Absolutely not. And so trying to find that balance for somebody who's still trying to find that balance is really hard. It's hard for me and it's constant. I think about it a lot.
yeah. Well, and like you said, it's just always been something that you've kind of carried with you, whether it was from your stepmom's influence or even just us growing up as kids in the 80s and 90s. I mean, everything that you would turn on the television was a workout video. It was Richard Simmons, it was Jane Fonda, doing the Thigh Master kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
That whole
Denise
diet,
Austin.
yeah,
That was my girl back in the day.
You said you had her videos.
All of them. I mean, I had so many workout videos. This is borderline embarrassing. And my mom would tell you I was in the basement doing them every night, because this was going to make me, you know, look like them. And
Mhm.
I don't know that I ever achieved those goals. There was a lot of nutrition, the nutrition piece I definitely didn't understand. And so much garbage was being thrown at us in terms of what we should be eating. I mean, it was the low fat era. And I can remember the books, my stepmom reading all the books on all the diets, and she'd pass them to me, sort of. And so it was in my brain from such a young age of, oh my God, this is bad, or, only eat these things. And yeah, I just talk about long-term effects. Here I am at 40 and I'm still trying to figure out nutrition. I think I have a much better handle on it, but it was, you think of the 90s and what the models look like. I mean, they were all like razor thin. They certainly weren't 5'2" with birthing hips like I am. So, um, aside from having two easy births, I definitely was given those childbearing hips for a reason, I guess. But aside from that, they haven't really been helpful to me.
They haven't served you in your
Yeah,
view of things.
right, exactly. So, um, yeah, I'm trying to find a better balance of body positivity, but also a healthy diet that doesn't leave me feeling like I'm, you know, craving something more, if that makes sense. Something that kind of fits all of those things.
Yeah, and it doesn't put you on like the roller coaster, just of life or of decisions or choices. I mean, that's fun whenever you're at an amusement park, but whenever you're trying to like plan your meals or to plan your lifestyle and stuff like that, that just becomes it's so overwhelming. And to use the word digest, there is so much out there that it makes it hard to pick what is the right thing for you as an individual to be on. Just like it's that hard to pick what types of foods, it's hard to pick the right types of information to digest to
To
make these
digest.
decisions. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. Because like I've said, we've done so many diets over the years. They've all been great, and they've served their purpose. And I think there are some great diets out there depending on what you're trying to do to your body, what your goal is, what you're trying to achieve. I mean, even the macro thing, I can buy into the science behind the macros. If you're trying to lose weight, but they're all, whatever you're doing, they're all a reduction in calories. And so, it's all that has the same goal essentially. But by definition, diet culture is a social expectation that tells us how we should eat, look, and if our bodies look a certain way, we'll be more accepted.
Hmm.
And so you think about when we were growing up as teenagers, how much it focused on diet culture, or even just how aware we were of women's bodies, of other teenagers' bodies. You think about MTV Spring Break, that always
Oh
comes
my
to mind. And you never saw some girl out there like 50 pounds overweight, front and center. Like that's not the girls they were picking to come up, on screen.
right.
Or even the girls that were a little rounder, not even 50 pounds overweight, but just they all had a certain look. I'll say that. And it's
Hmm.
always been that you need to look this certain way to be found attractive. And the older I get, I've learned, obviously that's not true. So much of
Right.
what we've been fed about diet culture is just not true. And I think it's interesting that people have always felt so comfortable commenting on our bodies, from my stepmom. She wasn't a terrible person by any means, but she's always, she had no problem telling me if she thought I was chubby or needed to lose a few pounds. And I can very distinctly remember this boy in high school
Oh,
just turning around one day and telling me that he thought that my thighs were too big. And I'm like, I've never weighed more than 120 pounds in my life. Like, how big are they and how bad are they bothering you? Like, I wish now I wish I would think that way, but I remember wanting to crawl in a hole and die. Like, it was just such a
oh.
brutal comment to take at like 16. So, people have always felt really comfortable, good or bad, when you lose weight, people are so quick to be like, you look amazing. And you're like, thank you. Cause it feels good when people say that. But you can't help but think, well, clearly I didn't look amazing before, or that there was room to improve. So it's just ongoing and, um, just something that I hope that we're not passing on to our kids,
Yeah, you're right.
especially
And
girls.
right.
I think
They,
men, it's different.
yeah, I mean, I would think so, but sometimes I hear like my husband or my son will be talking about like food or exercise. And so I don't know, maybe this global disease of just body judgment has kind of captivated everybody to a degree. But I do believe that we are much more sensitive about it as females whenever it comes to our girls and that
Hmm.
whole kind of perspective of things. But yeah, the whole idea of someone saying that you look good and then us taking that information and turning around in our head to think, oh, I must have not before. How
Right.
twisted are our
Right.
minds just to like automatically do that? That's what an
Go to the
automatic
negative.
thought is. Yeah, just to
Sure.
jump straight to it. And then how that influences every other decision that we have if that is the next adjoining thought with it. It's just,
Yeah,
it's such a toxic cycle, really.
it really is.
Mhm.
One I wish I could figure out. Um, but as far as diets go, I mean, I know you're a health psychologist. You clearly work with people on diet. I mean, I wish more doctors would talk about, diet and exercise and how that truly can alleviate so many symptoms that we experience in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, I truly believe that just diet and exercise can make a world of difference if you're experiencing a ton of body ailments.
Mhm.
It's not going to fix everything. I'm not saying that. There's definitely a place for medicine and firmly believe that. But I firmly believe that I look at my in-laws and I tell them all the time, like, you guys have found the fountain of youth.
Mhm.
They're, and they'll tell you it's diet and exercise. I mean,
Yeah.
and they're not obsessive about it. My father-in-law is a type 1 like you, so I mean, he
Mhm.
has to be somewhat obsessive, but really for them it's about exercise and movement, and they never stay still.
Mhm.
Um, my mother-in-law, I jokingly call her the Energizer Bunny because she doesn't stop. I would give anything to have an ounce of her energy, because she doesn't, never runs out of energy. At least she doesn't show it to us. But I truly believe that it can be a game changer for so many.
Yeah, and I think one piece that's just missing as we think about our culture as a whole too is that we are missing the role of dietitians as part of our general health.
Yes, yes.
And the cool thing about this setting that I have been, able to work in for such a long period of time, I'm always working with dietitians. And always have been, as whether it's a like a multidisciplinary team where we're both working with one patient on things, or just as a collective whole, having a dietitian as part of your healthcare team, I think is probably the one of the most important pieces to it, if not the most important. They should not just be used, in my opinion, whenever it comes down to, oh, you've been given a diagnosis of something. Now let's send you to a dietitian. They're often the afterthought instead of being looked towards just general health, preventative health, and then reversal of some issues, and then like maintenance of your just general self. I mean, they are so informative and they know the science. They're the ones that, aren't sitting here pining over all of the different research or going through the internet trying to find the best thing or, looking on Facebook, oh, this is the next, big kind of diet. They're the ones that are trained to do it, and really incorporating them as part of a lifestyle, I think is just, it's been the best thing for me to have that type of relationship with them, to learn from them, and then to really see the influence that that can have on somebody's life, like long term.
I actually, that gut reset that I did last year through this health and wellness place called Synchronicity over in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. It was led by a registered dietitian, and so I did feel like it was much more science based. I mean, I know that they all have science, a lot of the programs have some sort of science behind them, but it just was, she broke it down to exactly how our body uses fuel. And I really subscribe to that whole like plant powered,
Mhm.
basically a plant powered diet. and how good it is for overall gut health. And if you don't have good gut health, it kind of comes out in so many other areas. And so I do subscribe to that, but I did love that she was a registered dietitian. Of course, she's keeping up with the research. We did an in-body scan. It was a 21-day like gut health reset, and I lost 5 pounds of visceral fat in 21 days just following
Wow.
the diet alone. I wasn't exercising. I started to add some like light Pilates in at the end, towards the end. But I mean, there was something to be said for I had the in-body scans to back up, what they had told me would happen if you follow these simple principles. These things will happen, and it totally did. So I think for me, that's the one I most subscribe to. I feel like it was the easiest of all
Mhm.
the diets that I've done. It made the most sense to me. And I can actually cook like one meal and make everyone happy and just add a protein versus for my husband and son versus like trying to cook 4 different meals for everybody because we're trying to eat some sort of random stuff, or very specifically that just some things that kids don't like. And
Yeah.
I was trying to incorporate it just overall things that they would eat too. My daughter would live off of pasta. I mean, I hope she marries an Italian because she loves bread. She loves pasta. Like that's she loves cheese. That's her jam. And beyond that, I mean, she's not a big meat eater. And so
Mhm.
I could sneak vegetables into all the other things. I'm big on like the chickpea pasta and lentil
Mhm.
pasta. They can't tell the difference.
No.
Yeah, they have no idea. You put some pesto on there or some spaghetti sauce, they've got no idea. They will house that stuff. So that's the one that I found that's easiest for me to kind of generalize to the whole family. So that's sort of what I've been doing. But I've been, it's just hard. Jeff's doing kind of his own thing. We're not being like super. Normally, it'd be like, did you, did you eat something you weren't supposed to today? But we're doing our own kind of thing. And so we haven't been sort of like following up with each other the same.
Sure.
I'm trying to stay off the scale and just go by like how I feel and show myself like more love and positivity and doing more working out, like doing very specific workouts every day. So I'm
Yeah.
currently doing like a 30-day kickstart through my Melissa Wood health app that I'm obsessed with. Of course, I'm going to shout her out as much as possible because I mean, it's for me like one of the best health and wellness apps out there.
Mm.
And I do it every day. My guided meditations are through MWH. My workouts are mostly through MWH. And there's a ton of nutrition information on there as
Mm.
well. And she doesn't like to label whatever, how she eats. She does more of like intuitive eating. But she's definitely much more like plant focused and plant based. So I sort of subscribe to everything that she does because I want to grow like 10 inches and look like a supermodel.
I know. If we could ever figure that out, I feel like my life would have been so much different had I been like 3 inches taller.
That's
You
all. I
know?
mean, I'm not asking for a lot. Like 3 inches, I would be so pleased to be 5'5". I can't
Oh,
even tell you. 5'2" is so short. Okay. There ain't nowhere for nothing to go. Nowhere.
five
It's so
two.
unfair.
Right. And here I am at 5'5", sitting here being like, if I was just five
Just
seven or 5'8", no one's
you
ever
always want
happy.
more. That's right.
Right.
Grass is always greener.
No one is ever happy. But no, I think that those are challenges that we just end up facing on a day-to-day basis as moms, as people just trying to maintain our own health and then look after these little ones' health and then our husband's health. And then if we're having a dinner party, like how much is all of this going to change based upon these different circumstances? And it's exhausting sometimes to just think about or talk about. And then to actually do can also be at times pretty fatiguing as well.
Yeah, it's definitely time consuming. We've definitely been those people that like bring our own meal to like a dinner party, or um we smuggled in, what was it, like lettuce wraps into the PGA tournament a couple years ago because we were on some sort of diet. I think we were doing E2M at the time. But yeah, we are definitely those people. Like because it affects your social calendar when you're not drinking at all
Yeah.
or eating what everyone else is eating. So you're all already like making sure you've got your mocktail of some sort, and then whatever diet plan approved meal that you're trying to eat, you're bringing
Hmm.
over, and people are always like, "What are you doing?" And so you feel like you're that person that's always talking about whatever diet they're on. I'm sure you've seen those memes, but I mean, you are like if you're on a diet, like that's what you're talking about because it's so consuming. It's all consuming. You're meal prepping, you're most of the time doing some sort of workout with that. And so it takes a lot of time and effort and energy. And yeah, I mean, I find it fun. I do think that we get a lot of positive things from it. Like it almost like brings us closer,
Hmm.
and, there's something to be said for like after 30 days of doing something and you're kind of feeling like back to your old self again. It does help to sort of like reset for the new year. So I think that there's a lot of positive things about it.
Hmm.
And we tend to maintain throughout the summer. We live in swimsuits here in Charleston. And so it's not like we're, eating cake every night. We're paying attention for the most part throughout the summer, but as we get older, you have a couple glasses of wine, a couple beers,
Hmm.
it's harder to get that weight to come off. And it's such a annoying truth, but it is what,
It is what
it's
it
true.
is.
It's harder the older you get. And so
Mhm.
it just becomes an ongoing thing.
Yeah, and even going back to your culture on some of this, it's interesting that you said that, Charleston, you do live in bathing suits. I mean, yes. And then here, that's not the case. I mean, I still live very much entrenched in a very Appalachian lifestyle region. And food, on the other hand, um, can really influence what people think about you and always or question it. So,
Yeah.
like for me, for example, I'll have people say all the time, "Oh, you can't eat this, oh, you can't eat that," or "Why aren't you eating like all these different foods that are here?" And it almost forces in some ways like an unintentional like disclosure of health, which I don't care about. That's totally fine. But also it just shows the pressure that can be associated with eating and
Oh,
what you eat and how much you eat. And so it really, again, fuels that vicious cycle. Like here, a common thing to say is, "Are you full?" Like,
yeah.
you're not supposed to eat till you're full. Like, why are we using this as a word? Like, that's another bad word. Like, that's a no go. But we say that to our kids, even, before they leave the table or whatever else. And just even putting yourself in that mind state, just really, again, just kind of throws everything, off the edge. It's so much of it comes down to language. It comes down to what we were raised eating, um, what our family was like, if they were an active family, if they weren't. I think I was the only house as kids, and maybe you guys have to correct me if I'm wrong, but we just didn't drink pop. We, you could not find a soda in our house if you wanted it. And it wasn't, I mean, my parents weren't health nuts or anything else like that. I mean, this was my mom and my stepdad at that house, and then my dad, and my stepmom, grandmother, they never had pop either. We drank tea, and it was unsweet tea, despite the fact we live here. And so
Right.
I could drink whole milk, red cap milk, sweet milk is what I call it. I still drink sweet milk. That's what I have in there. Water or unsweet tea. And that was it. And then I go to my friends' houses and they'd have this thing like Coke. And I'd be like, what the hell is this? Or
Oh
Sprite.
yeah.
And I have a hard, I still don't drink them. I just didn't
You
grow
know,
up drinking it.
I totally grew up drinking it, and I mean, my dad always had Coke at his house. My mom had Pepsi at her house, but we always had soda and then ginger ale at my grandparents' house, and Canada Dry because don't bring that Schweppes nonsense over. But yeah, we totally had soda, and in college, I stopped drinking it just because I get an idea in my mind and like to go for it. And so I quit drinking it. To this day, I only drink soda if I don't feel good. I will get a can of Canada Dry out if I'm sick to my stomach. That's the only time I drink soda. I don't even really care for soda water. Even
Mhm.
though my husband loves it and like downs it. That's his mocktail of choice
Yeah.
is just a can of soda because it's that same like cracking a beer. It gives that same sort of like feeling for him, I think, after
Mm-hmm.
like a hard day. But yeah, I totally grew up on soda. You will never find soda in my house for my kids. I can tell you that. I'm just really big on water. Water is what we drink in this house. You can have tea, you can have black coffee. There,
Mm-hmm.
I do keep milk, but they really don't drink it. But when we go out to dinner, I'm fine with them having like a lemonade or chocolate milk. Like going out to dinner is a special occasion kind of thing. But
Yeah.
in this house, they drink water and they know that they don't ask for anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's one thing that I just like, I never made it an option for my kids, kind of like you. It wasn't an option in your house. I think that's healthy. Like, don't even, why even bring it into their, maybe if they catch it, if when they get older, maybe, who knows? My kids may turn out to be soda drinkers. I don't see it, but yeah, I would just rather not even have it as an option.
Yeah, and I think so much, and even research and other things show this, so much of how we eat is influenced in our first learning environment being the house.
Yeah.
And so, the types of food we eat, the temperature, the taste, all of it originates with what is being put in front of us, and in front of our kids. And as, moms, and a lot of times that responsibility does default onto us to carry that level of mindfulness. But like you said, if it's something that we're unsure of, then it just, that uncertainty is also present within that kind of meal construction. One of the things that I think helped us out the most is that I didn't cook a whole lot, you know, for, I don't know, most of my adult life. For whatever reason, I just didn't think that it was important. Because most of the time I would just eat raw vegetables. Like I could live off of raw vegetables, cheese, and nuts. And you say those are the only things that you're allowed to have, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. Um, you know,
No
I mean,
cheese on any diet I've done.
oh my gosh, I that's my main source of protein comes from cheese. I'm 100% like all dairy. Um, but with like the kids and different things like that, it just came down to me getting those, what were they, like the Blue Apron,
Yeah,
the,
like
oh,
chef in a box kind of thing.
yes, yes. And so there was another one that I liked a whole bunch. I think it was something called Sun something. I don't even remember. But you could select on it what your type of meal plan that you wanted to be on. So
Hmm.
if it was like vegetarian, if it was low carb, if it was diabetic, whatever. And so I would make those selections on it and they would get shipped to the house. So it was major convenient. It had this wonderful list of, instructions, which were easy to read. I didn't get turned away by it. And so that says a whole lot. Like if I'm reading something and I'm actually willing to read it, even if it's like 3 sentences, then it's probably somewhat reasonable. Um, I mean, it was just so easy and so
Yeah.
quick. And we did that for probably like about a year until I was like, okay, I've got this. And now everything that we consume within our house is based upon honestly what our bodies need. And we have to listen to that in order to make sure that we're fueling it properly. And so,
Hmm.
like for my husband, we really try to eat foods that are non-inflammatory, just because he aches and stuff like that. He's got joint things. He was harder on his body than I was. And then for me, I have to watch gluten and then carbs because I will just become an absolute train wreck if either two of those things happen. And so sometimes we would think that that doesn't leave a whole lot, but actually it does. We just have to maybe be a little bit more creative about it. And that's where living and working with those dietitians for so long has been so helpful. And eating a rainbow, that was one thing that they always tell you to do.
Yeah.
Um, but it is so true. But here in Appalachia, we have one color of food, white, right?
Yeah.
It's white bread,
I don't
white
know. We've
rice,
green
potatoes,
beans as long as
green
they have like a ham hock in them, you know? I mean, it
right.
is. But I also too, like for me, whenever I'm coming home, like I want those home cooked like meals that I'm not making because I also don't cook if
Mhm.
I can help it. So I am looking for like, the greasy green beans or that just like that tastes like home that are nostalgic that I don't eat all the time. Um, but they're so good because it just takes you back to like your childhood, you know? So I'm definitely guilty of that as well. I hate cooking. I don't really know why I hate it so much. I just never cooked.
Mm.
I'm not really good at it. I think that's part of it. But everyone always cooked around me. My dad was a cook, my mom, my stepmom, my stepdad would, you'd find him in the kitchen sometimes. Um, my great grandmother owned the restaurant in town.
Mm.
There was always someone willing to cook for us. So I just never really had much use for it. So I try. Yeah, I've got like 10 things in my repertoire that I do okay.
Perfect.
But I think that's why I'm willing to always try these like diets because generally it's things that we've never eaten before. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes every now and then you find a little diamond in the rough. Most of them are pretty terrible. Or I did something wrong, like left the pits in the dates. So, like, I've been known to do that. Um, yeah. So it just depends. And I'm like, see, this is why I don't cook because I'm the person that leaves the pit in the date and then puts it in the food processor and has disgusting chunks of pit in the whole sauce.
It happens. It's fine. Or the food processor just bites it. And so there,
Right.
there we go. It all happens. But no,
Uh,
it's such a confusing mess sometimes. But I think it's us just being willing to step back and see is what we're doing healthy. And that's I ask myself
right.
three questions anytime whenever I'm getting ready to sit down and eat something. I don't even say it aloud. Is it fuel? So if you have a meal and you walk away from that table feeling like you need to take a nap, you were not effective in your fueling method.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a
you're
great point.
you're supposed to walk away from a meal feeling energized and satisfied and not full and tired. Like that's Thanksgiving. We're not supposed to live every day like Thanksgiving. And so I have to think, is this what type of fuel am I putting in my body? Um, is this going to be helpful or is it going to be hurtful? And I don't even necessarily mean that in, I don't know, like a long term hurt or even like a short term hurt, but is this going to cause me discomfort if I decide to consume this? Like there are sometimes whenever we're at a restaurant or we're traveling or something, and they do put that bread on the table, and I
Mm.
smell it, and I'm like, oh God,
Weak in the knees, man.
oh, there was a time in my life, unfortunately, that I can still remember where I did not have three autoimmune conditions, and so that was probably a massive another disservice. Is that I had 20 good years where I remember what it was like to eat bread and pasta and just like do whatever the hell I wanted. Not so much anymore. But I'll ask Jeff sometimes. I'll be like, "Is it worth it? Like, really, is it worth it?"
Yeah.
Because I know if I eat it, then I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to
In
be,
pain.
oh my gosh, it's going to be ridiculous. And then sometimes, if it's not even about like gluten and it's like a flourless torte, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is going to, and that's okay, no gluten, but it's got the carbs in it. And then I know because I'm so sensitive to insulin as well as carbs that if I eat that, I am going to be an absolute train wreck for probably about 24 hours. Like I'm going to be up in the middle of the night getting what Rachel calls our diabetes juice. So poor thing. I don't know that she knew it was called orange juice for a long period of time because
Oh,
we keep it up there for me and Cameron. So when she goes out to restaurants, she gets orange juice because ours here is for us just in case we need it. But she calls it diabetes juice. And so I'll be up in the middle of the night getting my diabetes juice. Um, because I decided to have a torte. And now I'm
right.
trying to, then I'm on this yo yo for a period of time. And so it really does come down to is this fuel? Am I going to walk away from this table feeling energized? Is it going to help me or is it going to harm or hurt me? And again, it's just a quick decision making process that I go through in order to try to make the best decisions for my life at that point. And some of it comes down to moderation too, because like red wine and champagne, those are things that are good. Those are in my good category, but that only
Right.
comes at times in with very much mindfulness and moderation in it because
Right.
that it leads to its own tunnel of terror as well. So
Right.
um, but no, and it just literally it all comes down to that. And I don't feel deprived. You know, I,
That's the key though, I think, is finding that balance where you don't feel deprived and you're not like craving whatever it is that's outside of the current plan that you're on. I mean, that's probably where your consistency helps you so much, that you're consistently eating the same foods so
Mhm.
that you aren't really, you know, I mean, like you said, like you have to really balance everything. You're like, I mean, you have to weigh like how badly do I want to feel terrible for the next 24 hours. And
Yeah.
so that probably helps you say no a lot of times where most people,
Mhm.
just are going to dive in. I mean, you put a sweet next to a cup of coffee for me, and I'm going to have a really hard time saying no to that. Like, that's my kryptonite. Um, in my old age. But I also thought it was funny when you said that's how you know you live with a diabetic is when there's constantly orange juice in the house and nobody drinks it because it is reserved for that person
Mhm.
because that's how you all regulate so well. My father-in-law, it's the same way. Like, I would never ever touch the orange juice at
Mhm.
my in-laws house. We keep orange juice because I use it in smoothies or stuff like that, but yeah, I would never touch the orange juice at their house, which I think is so funny. It's just like one of those things. You either
Yeah.
know or you don't. um, but yeah, it probably helps you to regulate, I would think, a little bit just because of that. I feel that way about eggs. Like, unless that you hammer the eggs, I'm
Mhm.
told that there's like some sort of enzyme that you have to cook all the way, or you can be allergic to it.
Mhm.
And they just make me like super nauseous if I don't
Mhm.
cook, like just hammer them. So I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, I love a runny egg, like love runny eggs, but I can't eat them anymore because I don't want to be sick for the next 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
So it helps you make that decision. I wish sometimes I wish I, could be that way with sugar and sweets because it's a
Yeah.
toughie for me.
It's tough. It is tough. And we watch it real close with the kids too, just because I think that we're just so mindful of it from that kind of perspective. But we don't even I don't even like using the word restrictive. We're not. We just eat from it's very much a Mediterranean kind of balanced diet. So it
Yeah.
is lots of varied vegetables, but most of them don't have a lot of starch. So like right now we have potatoes in my house and that's not a normal thing. Like it's not very common for us to have that here. But like even with our little one, like if Rachel eats like a piece of candy because she doesn't get it a lot, I mean, you can instantly tell a difference in her behavior and her attention and her concentration just from getting that boost of sugar. And then you think about that on a more global kind of standpoint. I couldn't imagine what it was like for you to be in an elementary school where a kid's first meal of the day does not contain balance or protein,
Mm-mm.
and this is very much an American thing too. Like whenever you travel and you've been like overseas too, so much of what we eat is based upon our geography. And so
Mm-hmm.
here we have this huge bread basket, whereas Europe, they don't. Even in Italy, I remember going out to restaurants at different points of time and they don't bring you bread. Oftentimes on the table, they bring you olives and cheese. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you get a pasta dish, then you don't get garlic bread with it. That's like an American thing. That's not an Italian thing. Um, but if you get like a meat dish, then they'll give you bread so that way you can use it in the juice, right? But the breakfast there are like slices of meat, cheese,
Mm-hmm.
yogurt, some nuts. We're not just,
Fresh fruit,
yes, yes, we're not just pounding
hard
like,
boiled eggs.
right, we're not pounding these like I don't know, super sugary cereals with some type of juice there or like I mean, God knows that back in the day, I loved a Pop Tart. I mean, again, so I can't. This is where I start to mourn the days where I can have like the strawberry Pop Tart. Um, but if that's what our kids are getting as they go into school, I don't
Yeah,
know how teachers do it because they're just so revved up on sugar and then they all
sure.
flatline. And
Sure.
then, they may get some more of it at lunchtime. And then it's an onward cycle.
Yeah, it definitely, I remember thinking that a lot when I would see what they would have for like breakfast or lunch, or even my own kids when they're at daycare and what they're served. I really try hard to relinquish control on a lot of things because I don't want to be overbearing, but I vacillate between wanting to control the amount of sugar intake that they have and also just wanting them to be a kid and like
Mhm.
I mean, it was a free for all when we were kids. Nobody was paying attention to grams of sugar, carbohydrates,
No.
protein. Like nobody. We were literally like, you might as well tapped an IV of Kool-Aid into my arm. I, you know, I just it's so I vacillate because I'm like, well, at least my kids aren't like drinking Kool-Aid and soda every day. And
Mhm.
like if they want to have, ice cream every night, then so be it. Like there's some things that I just want them to be kids and have that freedom and not worry about it. But then I also, that part of me is like, well, am I wiring their brains to, be addicted to this substance? And so I constantly battle within myself on how much sugar they have. Should we be curtailing it? Yeah, I think we do a fairly good job some days, certainly holidays, grandparents around, it's again
Mhm.
a free for all. But I don't know. It's just a struggle. I think it's just, I mean, I also think that's part means you're doing something right if you're
Yeah,
actually thinking about these things. Cause like I said,
right.
nobody was paying attention to this when we were kids.
No.
And ultimately,
No.
all we're trying to do is prevent them from having any sort of negative impact, that we've had in our constant body struggle, bodies, negative body image, whatever you want to call it, struggling with your weight, whether you've been overweight or underweight your whole life. If it's consumed your life, you've struggled with it. And I think that, yeah, we're doing something right in the fact that we're at least trying to be mindful of changing the narrative for our kids.
Yeah, it's about moderation, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, not being so restrictive that we feel like ourselves that we ourselves are being deprived or that we're depriving them, but that we're teaching what like a healthy balance is or like what an actual and I don't believe that food should be used as like a reward or a punishment either. Yeah, yeah. So you've been good, so you can have dessert. No, you've been good
Right.
because you were supposed to be good. You know what I mean? It's the same kind of
Yeah.
rule with the toy. But also like whenever I'm thinking about my food choices, I won't say, well, I've been bad, so now I have to eat a salad, or
Right.
I've been good, so now I can have a cupcake. Like that kind of mentality again, it just really it sets that whole culture that we get from the outside internalized and then just keeps us spinning in this
In that
negative,
same wheel.
yeah, negative
Wow,
turn.
that hit me. I like it just goes to show how much more work I still have to do because those thoughts definitely still cross my mind. And yeah. I mean, but like I said, we've all got work to do, I guess, or at least some
Mhm.
more than others. But I definitely still have work to do. Some of the things you've said, I'm like, ooh, ooh, yeah, ooh. Yep, still do that. Uh-huh. Won't mention, yep. Won't threaten taking away ice cream tonight for my kids. I'll listen to the health psychologist over here.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, still, there's a whole bunch of shit that I don't got figured out. But this just comes from, I think it just comes from this just so much a part of every single day.
Hmm.
There's, again, for me, there's not a minute that goes by that I don't think about it. But then also, um, so much of what I say and do is sensitivity to words.
Hmm.
And I just think that that drives not only our thoughts, but our behaviors. And our kids pick up on it so quickly. And you're right about how much they just watch you. I mean, you
Hmm.
guys, I'm sure, have no idea that you're sitting there talking about like what diet you're on. And yet these kids hear it and they're like,
Yep.
and it's like,
Absorbing every bit of it.
yeah, I mean, I always heard you guys were sponges, but my freaking God, you
It's so
know?
true. Yeah. It's
Jeez.
wild what they're paying attention to and
Mm-hmm.
how they like to break. Jack, he didn't want to share something the other night. He was like, you can't have this anyway. It's not on your diet. And I was like, no, like, you're right. I can't.
And
Um,
also, don't say that.
don't say that. Right.
No
So,
doubt. But I think the
oh,
biggest piece of advice from all of this is that, I think maybe it's two or three things. One, I think that everybody could benefit from talking to a dietitian and
mhm.
really
Yes.
getting a good understanding about how your body just what its needs are from like a metabolic, a physical kind of standpoint, and also what doesn't help it. So like for me, I don't eat a lot of meat, and it's not because I think like meat's gross or I have a choice with it. It slows down my digestion so much that it becomes incredibly uncomfortable. And so if I eat a hamburger, I mean, I may have had, I don't know, I haven't had one in, oh, Jeff actually made a little round one for me the other night. And that was probably the first one I've had in maybe like 6 to 8 months, like any type of like red
That's
meat.
wild.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'll eat some sausage every now and then, or like I'll eat pork. Um, but I know what I eat because of the effect that it has on my body. And so really tuning into that, working with a dietitian to understand what all of these different things are. And then, you know, for us, and I truly really appreciate this because in some ways there's these old like core values that are part of like Appalachian culture in a sense. I know I've kind of talked about it a bit, but there's many things that are probably very problematic about it, like the eating till you're full kind of concept.
All comes back to self-love. We're going to talk about this every episode
I
because in the
know.
end, it comes back to loving yourself for exactly who you are and not necessarily what you look like.
Right.
And that is at the end of the day, I think where the real work comes from is that self-love. I'm definitely deep on that journey right now. And that's one of the things I say every day when I meditate to myself is I love you, just constantly telling myself that because eventually I'll start believing it. I love every inch of you. I love every piece of your body because it's been working out for like 30 years now. Like I got to give it some love,
You should. Yes,
you know,
Steph.
a lot of workouts when you add it all up.
There's videos
Tried them
still going
all.
on. Right.
That's right.
Right. Well, and I think too, you're right. It's about self-love and things, but it's also about acknowledging that I truly believe that unless your judgment is horribly off, which it's not, then every single day we are doing the absolute best that we can, given the knowledge, skills, ability, and resources we have. And at the end of the day, that is that's where it comes from, is we're doing the absolute best, and let's just sit with that as
Yeah.
being a part of the moment instead of all of the other things that can kind of cloud and get in the way of it. It's not it's not effective. That's another thing. I don't think about things as if it's good or if it's bad or if it's right or if it's wrong. Is this effective? Is what am I doing right now? Is it effective? And sometimes the answer is absolutely not. And that's whenever deuces go up and I'm just like, woohoo, we're gonna ride this train to hell real quick. But you know, why
Uh,
not? We're gonna ride this one all the way out. Um, but generally speaking, it is gonna come down to those like effectiveness based kind of questions. And whatever.
yeah.
We'll see where it gets us with all of this.
Yeah.
But
As usual, to be continued. See if we
right,
figure it out. I'd
right.
like to think like a year from now, I'll be like, I figured it out, everyone. I figured out how to balance it all.
That's it. Yes.
TBD.
Right, right. And thanks to all of you for your suggestions, comments, and likes. We're there together. So
That's right. So give us some suggestions, give us some comments, give us some likes. Go to our website at thelylaspodcast.com. You can find us at the Lilas Podcast on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. We're trying to get that up and running. Don't go to it yet because we haven't recorded anything, but we are going to figure TikTok out. That's our next mission. So up soon our TikTok, but find us on our social media. We'd love to hear from you on our website as well.
definitely.
Until next time, Lilas.
Peace out. Yeah. Watch your words.